Hey everyone, in this video I want to show you a system for building social confidence. And this is a powerful set of tools that I've used myself, that I use up to this day on a daily basis, and that I've also used with hundreds of clients at this point to help them become more socially confident. If you don't know who I am, my name is Achil Rudolf. I am a social confidence coach, and for the last 3 years I've coached hundreds of men, especially from the South Asian background living abroad, on how to make meeting people in real life easy. Now in this video we'll really go to the foundations of my work. It'll be a bit of a theory deep dive in the first half, and then we'll also translate it into practical exercises that I will want you to do here along with me. And at the end, if you follow this process, you will understand how confidence works, how it's built, and how you can build it for yourself. And it'll all make logical sense if you follow step by step. Now, there's a structure for this video. I want to cover first my understanding and my definition of the word confidence. That word requires some explanation. What is confidence? We'll understand that, and once we have understood that, what we can then do is to reverse engineer confidence. Because once we understand how confidence is created, we can set the conditions so that it can be created for ourselves intentionally. And then we'll use that knowledge to build your personal confidence ritual, a practice, a system that you can implement starting today in this very video to increase your confidence. So at the end of this video, you will get a deep understanding for a process that has taken me maybe 10 years to fully understand and grasp and implement in my own life. And you will also get a first practical guideline on how you can translate that knowledge into your own life and get more confident. At the end of this video, I expect you to be a tiny bit more confident than you are right now watching this. So let's dive in. What is confidence? Confidence, in my worldview, is a belief. It's the belief that you can do something. I can do it. And there's things that are hard to do and things that are a little bit more difficult to do, and we speak of confidence when we mean I can do it, and usually it's something that's considered by many people as difficult. So you can watch this video, for example, but that's not very hard. So saying I'm confident in the ability to watch this video doesn't make a lot of sense. We usually use that word when we mean I can do something difficult, like I can build a business. I can not just watch YouTube, but I can create a YouTube video. I can start a channel. I can find the right partner. I can approach an attractive woman in the public space. I can learn a coding language, or I can get a promotion at work. If you have that belief in your head, I can do it, that means you're confident. But as you saw already, it's highly context specific. So you can be confident in one area, one aspect of life, but not very confident in others. One example for this is there are lots of people I work with who are actually very socially confident, but only in their home country. In this case, this would be in South Asia. A lot of Indians are very confident when they're at home, interacting with other people in their own city or state in their own language. But once they're pulled out of that into the West, their social confidence disappears. And now the big question is, where does this confidence come from? Where does a belief like this come from? And the main answer is experience. The best reason to believe that you can do something is that you've already done it. When you've already done something many times, ideally, then you will believe that you can do it again. And it turns out that every single experience you make will touch this statement in your mind, this belief, and either increase the confidence or reduce the confidence in this certain area of life that you're engaging in. The way I like to visualize that is that you have kind of a lever for each aspect of life. So let's say this is the aspect of life when it comes to, let's just say, socializing. And now there's a lever here. And every time you make an experience related to socializing, depending on whether that was a good experience or a bad experience, that lever is going to move a little bit. And there are two sides it can move, two directions. The first one being, I can do it. And the second one being, I can't do it. And depending on whether the experience that you make is good or bad, that lever is going to move in either of these directions. If you have a great conversation with a stranger, you will feel, oh, this was fun, I can do it. Your belief will shift a little bit. You will get more confidence. But as I said before, there can be many different areas, and there's of course another area of life which is kind of a sub-area of socializing, and that is dating. And again, in dating you will have another lever here, and depending on what kind of experiences you've made with respect to dating, a specific subset of social life, that could be positioned somewhere very different, depending on whether you've done a lot of negative experiences with dating or not. There's also, of course, another one that's just approaching, right? Like cold approaching. Ooh. A lot of people haven't done very good experiences with that, so their belief is, I really can't do it. Because I've tried it a few times and it didn't work at all. Now this starts really, really early. It's important to understand that these levers are set already in your childhood. And in childhood, things just kind of happen to you, and you're not very intentional, but kind of depending on the random events that happen around you, depending on your parents, on your household, certain things will feel easy and certain things will feel difficult. Let's just say you grow up in a conservative household like mine, where dating is just not a topic and it's not supposed to be even talked about, it's not supposed to be done for sure. And so, for example, me, when I was growing up, whenever there was a scene on television that depicted any kind of sexual behavior, there was a very strong response from my environment. It wasn't really my response, I just looked at it and I didn't know what to do with it, but my mother and my father would tell me that that's bad and I shouldn't even look at that. Who knows if they're right or wrong, right? That's not the question here. What definitely happened was that I didn't just believe that I can't do it, I believed that it's even bad. So I was definitely not confident in thinking or talking about sex because it was just a topic that was suppressed. And this happens in all different areas. It might not have anything to do with socializing. It happens in sports, in cycling. Let's say there's a kid that gets on the cycle, and in the beginning when you start to cycle as a kid, you're probably going to fall. And now if the parents give you a lot of negative feedback and they say, oh, you're such a loser, you fell from the bike, that's going to create a strong negative experience and you will start to believe that you're not good at cycling. Now in this case, parents can make a huge difference because they amplify the experience of children, and as children, our response is dependent on our parents' feedback because we don't really know what is good and what is bad. And so we look to our caretakers to make sense of the experience and to give us feedback on whether what we did was good or bad. And so if we fall from the bike as a child and it hurts a little, and then the parents come and they're angry because you broke the bike and you have to now go home and wash off the clothes and everything sucks, well then that's a huge emotional experience that this child experiences, where this lever is going to move a whole lot to the left. Whereas what the parents could also do, and arguably should do, is to say it's fine, it's no big deal, that's totally fine, happens. Go on, do it again, you're amazing, you did well. Because then, of course, what happens is that this lever is not moved that much. It's moved a tiny bit, but it's not like he's not gonna get back on the bike again. And that's also very important to understand now. Once the lever has been shifted to the left a lot, and you have a very high negative association with this area, and you feel like, I can't do it because I had bad experiences with it, it's going to be very hard to move it back. These levers are not normal levers. Usually on a lever like this, on a music system or electronic system, you can just move these things easily at all points. But here what happens is, the more you go to an extreme, the harder it becomes to change the position of the lever. If you as a child had a few bad experiences with cycling, the problem is that you will not be inclined to get back on the bike. So it's going to be very hard for you to make any experiences that move the lever back to the right, because you're just not going close to the bicycle anymore. So what happens here is that you have a belief, and that belief determines what kind of action you take. If you already have the belief that you're not good at cycling, then you're not going to go back to the cycle. And then what happens if you don't go back to the cycle? Well, you actually become bad at cycling. So even though you were not necessarily bad at cycling in the first place, you just messed up a few times, you just fell a few times and got very negative feedback from your parents. Now what happens is that you will actually be relatively bad at cycling compared to your peer group, to your age group in the kindergarten, because this belief was implanted or created in your mind, and then you avoided the cycling. You avoided that action. And now, when you get that result of not being good at cycling because you've avoided it, that again reinforces the belief that you're not good at cycling. Because clearly you're not good at it. And then maybe some teacher in school says, hey, come on, you can do it, and he sits you on a bicycle. But because you've avoided it, because you've not taken action here, you're actually bad at it, and you will fall again. And then you again start to be reminded of that belief. So you basically just stay away from cycling altogether, and then of course you will not be good at cycling. You will be bad. The other thing that could have happened is that you fell. Let's just draw the little kid here. And you fell over, but from the outside, your parents gave you very positive feedback anyways. It's all good. No worries, we love you. You're the best. Keep going. You're so good at cycling. That could have happened, and then what would have happened is that this kid would go back to cycling again, would try it again. So it would take more action because the parents are encouraging him or her. And then, of course, the kid would actually get better at cycling. And then it gets better, and it believes that it's a good cyclist. So if it believes it's a good cyclist and it's fun to cycle, it gets a lot of positive feedback from that, it'll do more of that cycling. Okay, so the quintessence here is there are certain areas where you're not confident, and very often the reason for that is that you haven't done the activity of that area enough. The reason that you haven't done it is because you've avoided it due to some personal history where some point in your personal life, in your childhood maybe even, you were given bad feedback around that activity and it didn't work well. And so you just stopped doing it. Socializing with strangers, flirting, approaching people in the real world, that's of course one big area where a lot of people in the world just don't make good experiences, because when they tried it, they got bad feedback. The first few experiences were not good, and then a lot of people just avoid it. So to get good at something where the levers are already stacked against you because you had some weird initial experiences, you will have to be willing to do it despite the fact that you will probably fail. Because if you've gone through this cycle here, whether it's with cycling, no pun intended, or with approaching people in the streets, or just being social with your colleagues, right? Just talking. Hey, what's up? Nice to meet you. Small talk, whatever that is. When you've gone through the cycle and you're at this point where you don't believe that you're very good at it, you're just going to avoid those situations. You're going to say, no, I don't even want to meet new people. I don't even want to go and have small talk with my coworkers, because it's not gonna work, because it's not gonna be fun, because I'm not gonna be good at it. And that's the reality. That's the sad reality, in fact. You are not good at it. But here what you have to do is to find a way to do it anyways, and just do it over and over again. And even when the result is not super successful, you need to give yourself that kudos from your parents. Basically create that on your own. It's all good. So that you still push the lever a little bit to the right, even when it doesn't work super well. Okay, every time you meet someone, again, you have a lever like this. And in the beginning, as you learn this, your lever is here. So you are actually not very good at it. You'll have an interaction, it doesn't work super well, but you just still give yourself the feedback that it was actually good. And thereby you move the lever to the right a tiny bit. That's going to make you actually take action repeatedly, because you feel like, yeah, it's getting better, I like this, I'm somehow improving. And when you do it over and over again, of course, that lever will move quite a bit. It will actually move all the way to the green zone where you think, hey, actually it's easy, it's fun. So then you get that result and you start believing that you're actually good at it, and then it's much easier to start taking more action, and then here is probably where this lever moves very easily to the right. But this initial phase here, that's the problem. That's what we call hard. What usually happens in this part is that you don't even take a single step, because you're already believing it's hard, and then doing it would be too painful. You know it's not going to work. You know you're not going to get any results, so you don't even take the first step at all. And then maybe someone forces you to do it. There's a coach like me who comes along and says, hey man, today you're going to do it. Come on, let's go, let's do it. But then you do it, but since you still have the belief in your head that you're bad, you don't do it in a very confident way. You half-ass it. You do it, but you're super insecure about it, you're weird about it. And so you do it, but the action is not very resolved, and then the result is also not super good. You don't actually have a good conversation, you don't actually get anyone's contact details in a day, and you beat yourself up, and you say, see, I was right, I'm bad at this, it's not working. So now that we understand this, we are able to reverse engineer your confidence. We have to break that cycle of bad belief leading to bad or non-existent action, and then leading to actually bad results. And the way to intercept that cycle will be to start at the belief level. Because if you don't have the right belief, you're not going to take the right action. And then, of course, the right results will also not occur. But action and results are very hard to just force into the right direction. You cannot really control the results. The action is dependent on the belief. Now, the belief is also dependent on the results, but we'll see a hack here where we can intercept that connection between past results and current belief. And we will find another way to influence your current belief that is not just looking back into the past. To understand that fully, we need to just have a few more insights about the nature of beliefs and experiences and how experiences or results influence our belief. The first one is that beliefs can be quite independent of real-world events. They can be formed by imaginary experiences as well. So far in this cycle, I told you that results, so basically things that happen in your life, will influence your beliefs. And that's true. And as I said, then that feeds into your action and the action back to results. But what's interesting is that these beliefs are not just shaped by real-world events in your own life. This is not just your own personal actual experience, but it's also things that you see around you or things that you see happen in other people's lives. For example, if you watch the news a lot with wars going on all over the world, that'll also influence your belief. If you watch the news these days, you will believe that the world is in a very bad situation and war is around the corner. It'll actually physically put you into a more stressed state. It'll activate those hormones that are responsible for you to get ready for a fight. If you imagine a plane crash, that's not even something that actually happened. It's not even a real experience. It's just a visual that I just pop into your mind now. And let's go into it. Let's imagine how there's this plane and the pilot says there are some turbulences and then everything starts shaking and then there's these drops and people scream and masks coming out of the ceiling, babies starting to cry like hell. If you imagine that for 2 or 3 minutes, I don't want to do that to you, but if you did, you wouldn't want to get on a plane today. You would believe that flying is actually quite unsafe. Also, we don't just experience things once in our lives. Every time we remember something, we have an imaginary experience like that that's going to amplify the effect of the one experience on our belief. Especially if something bad happens, and that's maybe because we were not taught in childhood how to deal with bad things, because our parents were maybe overprotective or super scared, or anxious, or didn't give us the positive feedback that we needed. We tend to relive negative experiences and go back again and again. And we're actually quite good at conjuring up those negative images. We're quite good at creating imaginary pain. It's not that easy. It takes a little bit of focus to imagine something super beautiful, whereas imagining something painful for many of us is quite easy. And so we tend to do that, thereby experiencing something not just once, but many times. But this also works in the positive direction, where you can have an imaginary positive experience that's going to change your beliefs, even though it wasn't a real experience. An example for that would be the placebo effect. In medical studies, they give you a pill that just contains water, and it's consistently found that people who take that pill get better. The reason is that they make it seem like that pill was medicine. So you taking that pill start to believe that you took something that's supposed to help you. And then through whatever mechanism no one understands exactly, unconsciously or semi-consciously, your results start getting better. Your body responds to that. You do slightly different actions. Something changes and you suddenly get better health just because you drank water. So with that knowledge now, I think you understand where I'm getting. What we can do is we can imagine, we can generate positive experiences that change the beliefs, that change the input for our beliefs, so that the lever on all these beliefs where we think we are not good at something starts moving. Remember, we have these levers, and we have a lever that's very far on the left side because we have made very bad experiences in that area. Let's just say for now that is actually dating. We've had a lot of moments where this lever was pushed to the left, enough to start believing that it's hard, and for us to stop taking a lot of action and exposing ourselves a lot in this area. And so now what you can do, instead of saying I have to take action and just go out more and start talking to people more, you can do one thing before that, which is you can experience an imaginary good experience relating to dating. And that is going to move the lever a tiny bit to the right, even though it didn't really happen. So how do you do that? How do you create experiences that didn't actually happen? And that's where visualization and affirmation come in. Visualization is imagining an experience as if it happened in your life. And you know, because you have experienced things, you know exactly what it feels like to have a memory of an experience. And oftentimes, a memory will comprise of three things. It'll be kind of a thought, like something like, I did this at that time, something happened, and you can kind of verbalize that. But usually, very quickly, you will also have a visual, or let's even say a sensory memory of something. You will remember the look, the color, the temperature, the smell, whatever happened in that moment. I'm just going to remember the lunch that I just had, and I remember the taste of the tomato sauce that I ate, the maize in it. I can remember it. I also have a visual of my girlfriend sitting next to me while we were discussing something over lunch. I have the voice of her, I have her facial expression. And then what also comes in is a feeling, an emotion. That's what makes the memory very powerful, especially if it was an emotional moment. Having lunch with my girlfriend was kind of emotional today because we discussed something very difficult. We discussed how to go about sharing my life online without it feeling weird for her. And that was a difficult discussion, but we reached a conclusion. We reached a beautiful synthesis of our two views around this, and that felt uplifting. So I have that emotion in me right now as I remember that. That's basically what an experience or memory looks like when it's stored. And so what we can do now is to create experiences and memories, craft them as if they happened, so that they start moving the lever to the right. Of course, this will not be enough. Moving the lever a tiny little bit will not make a big difference. This was supposed to be red. But what it'll do is when that lever moves a tiny little bit to the right, you will be a tiny bit more motivated to take the right action. You will be a tiny bit more confident when you take that action. You will be a tiny bit more convinced of yourself, a tiny bit more energetic, a tiny bit more resolved. And then that means the result will be a tiny bit better. And when you then have the ability to see this slight change here, when you have the ability to look closely and realize that you just took a tiny bit better action and you just got a tiny bit better results, well, then that's going to again make the lever move more. And now we have a nice self-reinforcing mechanism here. You just did a little step in your mind by creating an imaginary experience, by memorizing something that never happened, but making yourself feel as if it happened. Your belief around that changes a tiny bit. Your action changes a tiny bit, which then, if you do that action long enough, will lead to tiny bit better results, and then will lead back to you updating your belief, maybe even disproportionately, in a much bigger jump. And that, my friends, is how you get out of that deadlock down here on the left side. So now we're ready to apply this knowledge and turn it into a practical system that you can use every single day to increase your confidence and move the lever to the right. This is a simple 3-step process, and the first step is just to list your negative beliefs. You simply write down a few of those areas where you believe that you're not good at it, where you believe that you cannot do it, where you know that your lever is pretty far on the left side and you're also rather unhappy about it, because there's lots of things that we can't do, but most of those we don't really care about. We don't want to be able to do them, but of course there's lots of things that we want to be able to do and we can't really do them. For me, a big area that I'm working on these days is creating content online. I used to have a lot of fears around socializing with real people in public spaces and finding the right partner and dating. But now that I've done that for a long time and I've gotten good at it, this is not a big fear anymore. But creating a video like this is still something where I feel my lever is somewhere here. And I'm starting to move it step by step by taking action, like recording this video here. So find one statement for the purpose of this exercise, just one statement that resonates in your head, where you know you tell yourself a certain story about not being good at something. And if you go into detail there, you will arrive at some ugly sounding stories. You will have to face certain things that you usually suppress, because as we spoke about it earlier, you don't want to do much in this area because it reminds you of the pain of the bad experiences in the past. So to do this exercise properly, you will have to endure that pain that's going to come up. And you have to look at those ugly stories that you tell yourself. One story that I used to tell myself was that I'm not good looking enough. That hurt me a lot in my dating. But even in my social media career, that's still a source of insecurity. When I go on camera and record myself like here, one train of thought that's in the back of my head is I'm not good looking enough to ever be good at social media. So write that down and don't be afraid when it gets a bit painful. It's gonna get painful. That's the point here. Once you're done with that, and you have one statement where it says something like, I'm not good at this. Maybe it says something, I'm not good at this because. The next step is to simply write the opposite. Write down the opposite. Just negate that statement. And write down, I am good at this. It doesn't hurt to write it down. It's not going to feel super good because you feel like you're lying. But this is part of the exercise. Don't worry, this will not be shown to anyone. Just see what that feels like to write it down. In some areas, it will be impossible to just negate that. Let's say you have a belief that you are too short or that you are dark-skinned, and that's why you don't have dating success. If you have that belief, you can't just write, I am light-skinned. If you have the belief that you are short, you can't just write, I am extremely tall. So in those cases, you can reframe the statement because you know that it's not really important how high you are. What you're really trying to say in that statement, when that was your limiting belief, was that because of your height, you don't have success. And so in those cases, you can negate the statement by saying, despite my height, I am great at attracting people. Or you can say something like, my height is not the most important thing. In fact, it's very unimportant compared to all the other things. So you don't have to necessarily write the exact opposite. You can also rephrase it in the most positive way that you can possibly come up with. Do that now. From the statement that you have written down, I cannot do a certain thing, you just reverse that and say, I can do. Write it down and see what that feels like. And now that will become the basis for the third step, which is to design an affirmation along with a visual. We have a thought already. Remember, there are 3 elements of an imaginary memorized experience: thought, visual or senses, and emotion. So the first part is already done. The first part is the output from 2. That's the thought. That's the words that can create this imaginary experience. The second thing is to add a visual or sensory element to that memory, to that imaginary world that we are creating right now. So what you want to do here is to imagine a reality where this opposite is true. And here you need a vivid imagination. You need to be a bit creative. You need to have your fantasy activated right now. And imagine, what would a world look like where the opposite of your negative belief is actually true? Meaning the most positive version, the most positive statement that you can make around that area of life. Imagine that was actually true and see what the world would look like in that case. What could you do with that skill? What would happen? How would people respond to you? Where would you be? Can you create a picture of that? And then, what we also need to add here in this last step is an emotion. I should add this over here. What's the emotion that you would feel if that was true? Ask yourself this right now. You can still stay in that image, in that visual environment, an imaginary experience, and ask yourself, what would it make you feel like if that was true? It's a difficult question. Sit with that for a moment. What would it make you feel like? And ideally, you write that down as well. Maybe 1 to 2 emotions you can just write down. That would make me feel happy. That would make me feel joyful, blessed, grateful, whatever that is. And now what you have here is an affirmation combined with a visualization and an emotional visualization. And that here is something that you can turn into a practice. You can do this process in a very quick version every single day. And that's what's going to make that lever move to the right side a tiny bit. Every time you do this, you move the lever. So now the final conclusion of this whole step here is to find a way to do this regularly. Find a way to go into this thought, visual, emotion sequence, ideally every single day. I do it in the morning at 8 a.m. together with a group. And you have to make it a ritual. It has to be something special. You can't just quickly scan through it, because then it's not going to be a real experience. we know we are hacking our brain here, and we know that this didn't really happen. The visual that you're going to conjure up here, we know it on a conscious level that that's not a real experience we had. So we need a lot of focus, we need a lot of concentration to make it seem like as if it actually happened. Now, to wrap this video up, I want to give you a few of my favorite affirmations that I used in the past or am still using. The first one is related to the previous point, where I still have that belief in my head that this stuff is actually hard. I still have the belief that it requires a lot of focus. I told you to make it a ritual, do it regularly, you have to do it a lot, otherwise it's not going to work. And that is also just a belief. And if I have the belief that this is hard and I'm not very good at it, well, then I'm not going to do it properly. And then exactly what we talked about earlier is going to happen. It's not going to work very well. So the first affirmation that I use myself is a meta affirmation. It's, I am great at transforming myself. I have a very vivid and very focused imagination, and I'm great at changing my beliefs. Okay, this is a meta affirmation because it's an affirmation about the process of affirmation. And I do this as the very first thing in my personal set of affirmations that I go through every morning. Otherwise, I won't do the rest with the right mindset, with the right confidence. For a very long time, I had another affirmation, which was very simple. It just said, I am a successful entrepreneur. Because for a long time, I didn't believe that. I didn't believe that I was a good entrepreneur. And so I just said that every single morning. I am a successful, and you can just insert whatever you want to be good at. And that is already a good affirmation. Another affirmation that I'm using now every single day to tackle my fear and lack of confidence when it comes to making videos is, I love sharing my truth on social media. And it goes on a little bit. It says something like, I love sharing my truths on social media, and I'm great at capturing people's attention and adding value with provocative yet original ideas. I wrote a whole paragraph like that, and then I imagine myself posting a great video, getting a great response, getting a lot of debate going, getting a lot of likes, getting a lot of comments, getting a lot of people to get interested in the content and in the coaching program that I offer. And so I imagine that every single morning, and that helps me then go out and actually make the content. And then there's a few more almost spiritual affirmations that I use. One is, the universe gives me the right challenges at the right time. That's an affirmation that helps me deal with adversity, because there are lots of challenges that I face on my journey, and it's easy to get into a negative state when you look at all the difficulties and the things that are not going well. But I remind myself that those challenges are good for me. They help me grow. They literally challenge me to become a better version of myself. And that affirmation helps me remember that. A similar, deep and spiritual affirmation is something like, I love myself. I even use a more elaborate Sanskrit mantra that expresses the same sentiment. It's more something like, love is the essence of everything. And that's another highly emotional affirmation for me, because it is a Sanskrit mantra that was used in my family for a long time, and there's even a way to chant that mantra. That's something I use. So these are just some examples that I like to share here with you. But you have to come up with your own. You have to come up with the limiting beliefs, with the negative beliefs that you hold, and then design these affirmations based on those so that they target the right levers and move the levers that matter for you. A lot of people are talking about this stuff, manifestation, visualization, affirmation, and it's shocking to me how many don't really understand the theory that I just presented here in this video. This stuff is not rocket science. If you go through this material and you watch this video and maybe watch it again, you will understand the logical derivation of why this stuff works. But most people mix it with a lot of esoterics that doesn't really make sense. And so for the longest time, I just put that all into the same drawer and said, that's woohoo, that's esoterics, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. At some point, I did hear it often enough to say there's got to be something true about this. So I actually started doing this stuff before I even understood it. And I had this affirmation, for instance, about I am a successful entrepreneur before I even understood how affirmations work, because I just heard from enough people that this is something I should do. But really, honestly, I didn't do it properly. I just read it out, I just wrote it down in my notebook, but I didn't do the visualization, I didn't do the emotion, so it didn't work as well as it could have. So it's important you understand the mechanism, because then you're actually going to believe in it, and then you're going to do it properly, and then it's going to work much better for you. So I really hope that you understand it better now and are motivated to make this work for your own life. If you need help with that, there is a link in the description to another video where I explain how I help people apply this process and actually turn it into a better social life, better dates, and the right partner for a relationship. Leave a like for this video if you enjoyed it, put a comment if you have any questions, and subscribe to the channel. So long, Samgachatvam, Namaskar.